I feel like iDubbbz with this like janky, weird setup. This probably looks so stupid on camera, but it's the best I can do to get the best audio and best camera quality, I guess. So the trade deadline has come and gone, and the Winnipeg Jets, they make some moves today out of a trade deadline out of a trade deadline day, I should say, that really didn't have a ton of big moves going for it because a lot of the big moves came over the weekend, and the Winnipeg Jets weren't necessarily involved in any of that because they were trying to figure out what their plans actually were going to be for the deadline because they left it down to the last minute. I did make a video a few weeks ago talking about whether or not the Jets should be sellers at the deadline, which I thought they should be minor sellers at the deadline. You can go check that out. It's going to be in one of the corners here. But basically, my entire point of that video was to say that the Jets should be looking at trading off some of their expiring assets going into the deadline rather than, holding on to these guys, because at that point, the playoffs looked kind of out of the picture, and it made much more sense for the Jets to go out and trade off expiring free agents and get some futures back and reload for next season. And did the Jets do that? Well, they sort of did and they sort of didn't. And I think this was, especially within context of how the past week or so has gone for the Jets, where they've gone on a nice little run here, where they're now within 4 points of a playoff spot. So they've gained some ground a little bit, but it's still not looking entirely likely that the Jets make the playoffs. So they were kind of in this weird spot, like, again, I said a few weeks ago, where they were too close to the playoffs to give up on them, but they were also realistically not going to make it with the amount of teams that were involved. A couple of those teams have fallen out. The Ducks had their fire sale this week, and a couple of other teams decided to sell that were once in the playoff race, whereas the Jets still kind of stayed in the race a little bit, so they couldn't necessarily be out of it, but they also couldn't necessarily buy in and, sell off at the deadline, not sell off, like sell off young assets in order to get to the playoffs and perform in the playoffs. They decided not to do that either. Instead, they did a little bit of both, and we're going to go through this timeline like as the trades broke, because it doesn't make sense to talk about like the Andrew Copp trade and then get into the other trades. It's good that you know the story first behind the deals and the thought process that I had throughout the day leading into the eventual big trade of the Andrew Copp deal, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. And this all started last night with two late night acquisitions. The first one being a reacquisition, and it was of Mason Appleton. The Winnipeg Jets traded a 4th round pick in exchange for reacquiring Mason Appleton from the Seattle Kraken. And it's good to know what Cheveldayoff's thought process was with these deals, and that's why you have GM availability at the end of the trade deadline. And then also it's valuable to have things like Trade Center, because then they can interview these GMs about what their thought process was in these types of deals. And earlier today on Trade Center, James Duthie asked Kevin Cheveldayoff about the thought process behind reacquiring Mason Appleton, and he said this was a guy that they didn't want to lose at the expansion draft, so they tried to make moves to try and keep him on the roster, but the ask was too high, so they let him walk. And that's what happened, and Mason Appleton hasn't had a great year for Seattle, but who really has had a great season for Seattle, I should say. So the price lowered, and now they get Mason Appleton back for a 4th round pick. So they lose 60 to 70% of Mason Appleton's season, but they also only give up a 4th round pick to get him back. This is a guy that the Jets know, and this is a guy that, going into the absence of Andrew Copp, this is a guy that can kind of fill some of the holes that Andrew Copp leaves in this Jets lineup going forward. Andrew Copp, very versatile forward, could play on the power play and the penalty kill. Appleton brings some tenacity, some energy to the Jets lineup. He has played with Adam Lowry in the past. I expect him to probably be in the exact same spot he was in last year, which was 3rd line right wing. and for him to slot right back into the lineup and probably still be just the Mason Appleton that everyone else knew. So I honestly think that's a win for the Jets to reacquire a player that they already know that has still some two-way upside, that is still young enough to realize some of that potential that he does have to be a very solid middle six guy in the Jets lineup. And then they make a selling acquisition by trading off Nathan Beaulieu to the Pittsburgh Penguins for a conditional 7th round pick. The condition on it being that if Pittsburgh reaches the conference finals and Beaulieu plays in 50% of the games, Winnipeg gets that 7th round pick. If he doesn't, then they don't get a pick at all. They just give Nathan Beaulieu for free. And I'd say this is kind of a toss-up. Nathan Beaulieu, although he is a pretty solid defenseman, pretty solid 7th D type of guy, he's been injured all year pretty much. He's only played in 24 games. So you're not going to get a ton for a guy like that. So it makes sense that the Jets decide to sell him off. And if he comes back for Pittsburgh, great. But if he doesn't, who cares? You don't get anything. But if he does play, cool, you get a 7th round pick. Like, it's not a major deal. And then the Jets were a bit quiet through, the morning. And, Cheveldayoff has his interview and all that type of stuff. They don't really do a ton. And then some trades come trickling through. Marc-Andre Fleury goes to the Wild. That type of stuff happens. And then around 1:30-ish, I believe, is when this trade went down. This is when the trades really started to come down, leading into the final stretch before the actual trade deadline. So the Winnipeg Jets call up the Ottawa Senators, and they acquire Zach Sanford from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for a 5th round pick. So this is another deal where the Jets are acquiring a winger that can definitely fill into their bottom 6, can definitely fill a role. He makes $2 million this year, so, whatever on the cap hit. But this is a guy that is an NHL player, can play in the bottom 6, brings some physicality to their lineup, and has in the past been shown that he can score. Giving up a 5th round pick for a guy who's going to play in your bottom 6, I mean, that's another buying acquisition for the Winnipeg Jets. So again, kind of mixed signals there, but they acquire Zach Sanford. He's going to be just fine, I think. The Jets could re-sign him in the offseason if they really want to. It depends on how he fits into this Jets group, and we'll have to see about that. But with the acquisition of Zach Sanford, multiple insiders, both on TradeCenter and on Sportsnet's coverage, kind of started to talk about, okay, the Jets picked up Mason Appleton, a guy that they knew that has played in their top 9 before. They pick up Zach Sanford, who has played in the top 9 of other NHL teams in the past, is an NHL player, and he's making $2 million. Something has to be coming, and everyone was expecting an Andrew Copp deal at some point today, and it came out during the weekend that the Jets had a deal on the table for 2 second-round picks for Andrew Copp, but they were looking for a 1st round pick, and they asked Kevin Cheveldayoff earlier in the morning. James Duthie asked him about the status of an Andrew Copp deal, and it's status quo at that point, I guess. So the trade goes through, and it looks like the trade that was on the table over the weekend is what trade goes down for Andrew Copp, because it seems like the Jets, I guess there just wasn't enough interest for Andrew Copp, or there wasn't enough interest to the point where someone would be willing to give up a 1st round pick for him. In terms of what I said a few weeks ago, I said the Jets should be able to get a 1st round pick for Andrew Copp. I guess the interest in Andrew Copp wasn't there in order to get a 1st round pick, which I'm surprised about, but I'm also not surprised that other GMs are also saying we're not giving up a 1st round pick for this guy. But I still do think the Jets get a pretty good haul for Andrew Copp based on the market earlier in the day. So here's the full deal for Andrew Copp. The Winnipeg Jets trade Andrew Copp and a 2023 6th round pick to the New York Rangers in exchange for forward Morgan Barron and 2 conditional 2nd round picks and a 5th round pick in 2023. There are conditions on both 2nd round picks. Let's get into those. So for 1 2nd round pick, the condition is the Rangers' 2nd round pick in 2022 will become a 1st round pick in 2022 if the Rangers advance to the Eastern Conference Final and Copp plays in at least 50% of New York's playoff games. That's a condition that we've seen on a lot of deals today, and Kevin Cheveldayoff especially has put a lot of conditions into the picks that he's trading. So it's interesting to see how similar a lot of these conditions are, but makes sense. And then for the other second round pick, it's either St. Louis's second round pick in 2022 or the Rangers' second round pick in 2023. It's Winnipeg's preference as to which one they get. They'll choose which one it is. So there's the possibility of one of the second round picks becoming a first round pick if the Rangers make the playoffs. So if you're a Jets fan, you should be cheering for the Rangers in the playoffs because you will want them to get to the Eastern Conference Final, and you want Andrew Copp to be a big part of the reason why they get there. Now, Rangers fans, let's talk about what you're getting in Andrew Copp. Andrew Copp is an unbelievably versatile forward who can play up and down in your lineup. I'm pretty sure you've heard literally everyone say this about Andrew Copp today. He can play on the power play. He can play on the penalty kill. He's a good checking forward. He can play on your first line, your second line, your third line, and your fourth line, and he will do anything Gerard Gallant asks of him to do. He's a Swiss Army knife type of player where you can plug him into any spot and he will succeed. He can play center. He can play the wing. He's mostly playing the wing, but again, he can play center. And this is some added offensive depth that the Rangers, I think, needed because their forward group didn't really look the greatest. And now they're going into the playoffs with a very versatile forward in Andrew Copp. I think you're getting a really good player. And if he re-signs with the Rangers, which, I mean, he is an American and he knows how big of a market the Rangers really are, it seems like a good fit to me for Andrew Copp to be with the New York Rangers. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the blue, red, and white. Is that what you say? Blue, red, and white? Blue shirts. I'm excited to see him in a blue shirt. Not a Blues shirt, like a St. Louis Blues shirt, but a blue shirt. You know what I mean. I think Jets fans are going to miss Andrew Copp quite a bit. I'm definitely going to miss him. He's going to be a missed piece of the Winnipeg Jets lineup, but the additions of Mason Appleton and Zach Sanford earlier in the day do kind of help with, filling the holes, I guess, of missing Andrew Copp. You get some toughness and you get some two-way play, both from Mason Appleton and Zach Sanford. That's why those two deals were made, because you're not necessarily selling and giving up on the playoffs. You don't want to send that message to your fans. But at the same time, you realize how big of a package you could get for Andrew Copp, and the Jets get it here. 2 second-round picks is great. They also, I believe, get a 5th-round pick in 2023 as well. So 3 picks coming from the New York Rangers, and the Winnipeg Jets really love to make deals with the New York Rangers, Jacob Trouba and Kevin Hayes. And then there's the forward prospect, Morgan Barron. He's a 6'3", 6'4", above 200 pounds forward for the Winnipeg Jets now, I guess. He has 1 assist in 13 games this season with the New York Rangers, and I believe he has 15 points in 25 games with the Hartford Wolfpack of the AHL, and then he also was pretty much a point per game last season in the AHL. So this guy has some offensive upside. He's 23 years old. Should be interesting to see how he develops with the Manitoba Moose. This guy could be, a bottom 6 guy, I think. I think he'll have some decent upside to be a bottom 6 guy, maybe even a third-line staple on the Jets lineup. He's big, which is nice because he fits the mold of what the Jets look for in their prospects, is, having some size and some tenacity to them. And I think Morgan Barron is definitely going to fit in pretty well, and I think he'll be a good addition to the Manitoba Moose in the AHL. And who knows? Kevin Cheveldayoff said that he feels that he's pretty close to being a regular in the NHL. We'll see if he gets a shot at the NHL lineup next season. A minor deal as well earlier in the day. Nelson Nagier gets traded to the LA Kings for, I think it was Phillips. That was his last name. He's a defenseman of the LA Kings farm system. So an AHL deal. Nagier was a pretty decent guy with the Moose, but, it's nice to have some addition to defense, and welcome Phillips, whatever your first name is, Phillips, to the Manitoba Moose and the Winnipeg Jets organization. We also re-signed Christian Reichel to a 2-year extension today, which should be interesting to see. Christian Reichel has some NHL games played this season. He's looked okay in them. I don't think he's necessarily an NHL player, but good to sign some additional depth. And that's all the Jets did today. And honestly, I'm not mad at them. And I think Kevin Cheveldayoff did a pretty good job today. I think he did a pretty good job in terms of making moves to make sure that the Jets weren't out of the playoff hunt. But he was also recognizing that in the event of them missing the playoffs, you would regret not trading Andrew Copp, because if you can't re-sign him, then you get him for nothing, or you don't get anything for him, I should say, and instead you trade him for 2 second-round picks, you get a prospect, and you get another 5th-round pick. It's a good thing that the Jets did with moving Andrew Copp. I think it's the better decision to make. And yeah, if I had to give Kevin Cheveldayoff a grade, I'd say a B+. He definitely had a good day. That's what I would say. Better than a lot of other GMs like Kyle Dubas, who I thought was going to make more moves in the day, and some other guys that did not make moves. Vegas especially, I was surprised how quiet they were despite trading Dadonov, and then apparently there's a problem with the Dadonov deal. But I think Kevin Cheveldayoff had a very good day today at the trade deadline. And I would like to know what you think about his trade deadline moves. Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about the Andrew Copp trade? What do you think about all the trades that went down today for Winnipeg? And not just Winnipeg, other teams as well, if you want to talk about other trades as well. I might post a video tomorrow fully recapping the deadline. I was going to do one today, but I work, and then I came home from work and I wanted to talk about the Jets stuff first. So that's it for this video, though. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you in the next one.